Welcome to the Allison Knows podcast. We take deep dives into, well, really compelling sources to try and uncover some surprising insights. And today we're embarking on let's say, a truly unique journey. We're venturing into perspectives that look far beyond just the daily headlines.
Yeah, definitely beyond the headlines.
We're talking about insights into unseen energies, deeper motivations, potential future outcomes.
Yeah.
All seen through this really intriguing lens of psychic predictions and astrological forecasts.
That's right. Our sources for this particular deep dive, they come from psychic medium Susan Lynn and astrologer Karen.
Okay.
And they offer, through their own unique methods, a sort of behind-the-scenes look at global events. It's definitely an alternative narrative.
Sounds spiritual.
Spiritual, yeah. And sometimes you could say conspiratorial.
Hmm.
It suggests that a lot of the current chaos, the political instability we're all seeing, isn't just random.
Right.
It's actually part of a much larger, pretty profound energetic shift, as they term it.
Okay, an energetic shift. Let's really unpack this then. Our mission today, really, is to distill the most important nuggets, the key takeaways from these predictions.
Right.
We want to help you understand what these spiritual and astrological insights might suggest about our current world and maybe what might be coming next.
Yeah.
Now, a really crucial note here for everyone listening. This information, it's presented in the sources as predictions and interpretations.
Right.
And they explicitly state it's meant for entertainment purposes only. So our goal here is simply and impartially to convey the ideas that are contained within the original source material. We're not endorsing, just reporting.
Exactly. And what's truly fascinating, I think, is how these predictions manage to intricately weave together things like political actions, these hidden power dynamics, and what they call a profound public awakening.
All into one narrative.
Yeah, into one kind of coherent, if alternative, narrative.
Okay, so let's start with a concept the sources bring up that sounds really interesting. They call it Kabuki theater. This idea, it seems like it radically shifts how we might view global events. Can you take us through what that truly means in this context?
Well, the sources suggest that many global events, maybe most major ones, are not really what they appear to be on the surface. They actually describe them as Kabuki theater or, acts on a stage. The really profound insight here, according to these sources, is that the very nature of global power is fundamentally theatrical.
Theatrical, like performances.
Exactly, performances. Often based on manipulating emotions, public perception, rather than just straightforward geopolitical objectives. World leaders, they suggest, might even orchestrate certain actions purely for, say, sympathy or to create a specific reaction, using these performative displays to drive international relations.
That's a provocative idea. For instance, the sources claim that the impostor in the White House
That's the term they use.
made a unilateral decision to, quote, boom Iran using a stealth plane. Now, this wasn't framed as a calculated strategic military move, was it?
No, not at all. It was described more as a big flex.
A flex.
Yeah, like someone showing off a new cool toy is the analogy used. Almost impulsive.
So this raises a really important question that the sources seem to be posing. What are the true motivations behind some of these global actions, if not strategy?
Exactly. And they assert, in this case, that Iran actually already knew the attack was coming.
They knew. How?
Due to satellite imagery, apparently. And they'd moved their assets. So this very costly expedition, this flex, was ultimately ineffective.
So the suggestion is, what a more personal motivation, maybe even immature.
That seems to be the implication, something personal, maybe ego-driven, behind a significant military expenditure rather than a calculated strategic one. It fundamentally makes you question the narratives we typically receive,
Absolutely. If world leaders are potentially engaging in this Kabuki theater, who else is behind the curtain, so to speak? The sources also talk about powerful financial figures, robber barons.
Yes, robber barons, or oligarchs, that's the term used. They are predicted to be actively working right now to maintain control and, crucially, prevent economic collapse.
To protect their own interests.
Primarily, yes, even considering making deals with political opponents if necessary. There's a strong belief reflected in the sources that these figures operate with an overconfidence in their ability to change the narration.
Thinking they can control the story.
Exactly. Manipulate public perception. They apparently initially signed on to something called Project 25.
Project 25. What's that?
The sources frame it as something that, for them, represented huge financial gain. The promise was, No taxes, no regulations, pure benefit for them.
Okay.
But the insight here, the twist, is that even these incredibly powerful figures who maybe believe they control all the variables
Yeah.
are now realizing it could profoundly harm them. The whole thing could unravel in ways they didn't anticipate.
So they're getting nervous.
Apparently. And this is leading them, potentially, to consider making a deal with the Democrats just to prevent the economy from truly tanking.
Wow.
Which highlights a central theme in these sources, that the universe, or karma, as they sometimes put it, kind of has its own surprising agenda regardless of human plans.
Okay, so even the powerful aren't fully in control, according to this view. Let's shift gears a bit. These predictions, they also point to some really major changes in leadership, don't they?
Oh, definitely. Big ones.
Specifically, the current impostor president, as the sources call him. He is strongly predicted to not finish his term.
That's a very strong prediction, yes.
What did the sources say about how this might actually unfold? What are the mechanics?
Well, Karen, the astrologer in the source material, she apparently received what she called a psychic hit.
A psychic hit, like a sudden insight.
Yeah, an immediate intuitive insight or impression. And the hit was that the last State of the Union address he gave would be the last State of the Union he would ever give.
Meaning he'll be out of power by when?
Yeah.
Next January.
By January, yes. That's the implication. Her astrological analysis, looking at the charts, points to September as being a particularly big month for him.
The Gao.
A time for him to be, quote, down for the count.
Down for the count. Could that mean health or something else?
It could be health issues, yes. Or possibly some kind of revealing information coming to light. Something significant happens in September, astrologically.
And what about the psychic side, the guides?
The guides, Susan Lynn's guides, suggest he will be taken out.
Taken out by who?
Because he is causing too many problems for them, and them seems to refer to his handlers, the people supposedly controlling things behind the scenes.
His own handlers turn on him.
That's the suggestion. They even use this striking analogy, like a monster you think you slayed that just gets up and runs into the darkness.
So unpredictable even to those supposedly pulling the strings.
Exactly. It suggests that even the handler's own meticulously laid plans might not be foolproof within this larger energetic landscape that the sources describe. Things can go off script.
So, okay, if this leader is potentially removed, what does this all mean for the public? You mentioned this public awakening earlier. Is it directly linked to his removal and these unfolding revelations?
Absolutely linked. The sources describe a huge energetic shift that's directly driving this awakening, and it's creating a kind of collective fatigue with conflict.
People are just tired of it all.
Deeply tired. A central theme emerging is that humans don't want war. That's a direct quote. They're done with wars, pushing back strongly against sending troops abroad.
And this is just one political side.
No, interestingly, this sentiment is seen even among the impostor president's own base. People who might otherwise support him, but who favor an America First, non-interventionist policy.
Okay.
And it's predicted that a significant chunk of this core group, maybe 30 to 40% of the sort of MAGA or America First base, will experience intense cognitive dissonance as truths they firmly believed start to be revealed.
Cognitive dissonance, like their worldview gets shattered.
Exactly. The things they held as true are shown to be false, leading them to wake up, as the source put it. And not just wake up quietly.
What do?
They take to the streets, often turning their fury towards their own electeds, the people they voted for.
Wow. When is this predicted to happen?
This is expected particularly in late July and August. The initial estimates mentioned in the sources are around 20,000 people taking action initially.
20,000 people.
Uh-huh.
That's significant. What's the advice given in the sources about this period?
The advice is quite striking. It's essentially to let them do their work. Don't get in their way.
Why?
Because these individuals are described in the sources as being mad, angry, vicious in their determination to push for truth and accountability. They have a specific role to play in this awakening, apparently.
This sounds like a really intense period of revelation, then. Hidden information just bursting out.
Exactly. It's framed as a time of major truth-telling. The sources even state that the person of the year for 2025 is a whistleblower.
The whistleblower. That's symbolic.
Highly symbolic. Signifying that hidden information, secrets behind the walls will just pour out. It can't be contained anymore.
And astrology supports this timing.
Yes. Uranus moving into Gemini around the 4th of July is seen as a key astrological transit. It's expected to crack things open, expose secrets that stick like flypaper, things that were hidden become impossible to ignore.
Is there danger associated with this period?
Well, there's also a perceived lot of energy around the potential for a false flag event in July.
A false, you mean like the country attacking itself and blaming someone else?
That's the type of event described, yes. However, the prediction is that any such actions would be quickly found out precisely because of these whistleblowers and the general awakening energy. The truth will come out rapidly.
So the attempts to manipulate might fail more easily now.
That's the strong suggestion. The old tricks won't work as well in this new energy.
Okay, so July sounds incredibly intense. What happens after that? What do the predictions suggest for August, following the potential departure of the impostor president?
Well, sometime in August, after this departure, the sources believe a deal has already been made.
A deal for what?
To install JD as the new president.
JD, is that initials or?
The sources use JD, sometimes mentioning Vance as the likely individual. But the core prediction is this installation happens in August.
And how is the public expected to react to this?
Oh, the public is expected to be absolutely gleeful.
Gleeful.
Yes, and also punch-drunk, dazed, and confused with happiness and sheer relief at the removal of the previous figure. Just ecstatic that he's gone.
And this has wider effects.
Big time. It's predicted to lead to what the sources call a real renaissance, a period of upliftment, which will also significantly boost the economy and even national mental health scores.
Right.
Like a collective sigh of relief.
A renaissance. But wait, this relief, this installation of J.D. Vance, it isn't the whole story, is it? The predictions suggest there's a deeper instability, even with this new leader.
No, it's definitely not the end of the story. The handlers and puppeteers, as the sources call them.
The ones who supposedly installed him.
Yes. They are seen as being overconfident, again, in their ability to control the narrative to manage this transition smoothly.
And it won't be smooth.
It seems not. While JD, or Vance, is installed, it is strongly predicted that he will not have the, quote, karma, or the wind beneath his sails, to actually remain in power for long.
No karma. What does that mean in this context? Like no real legitimacy or energy?
Exactly. He's described almost as a puppet or an empty vessel. Someone who will essentially deflate due to a lack of genuine energy, genuine public support, or maybe spiritual backing.
So even a meticulously planned succession faces unexpected challenges. He won't finish the term either.
That's the prediction. He doesn't finish the term that he steps into. And adding to that, financial scandals are also predicted to surface specifically about Vance.
So more turmoil, more revelations.
It seems so. The instability continues, suggesting this energetic shift is much bigger and more unpredictable than any single planned political maneuver by these handlers.
What about other potential figures? Like Governor Gavin Newsom. He's often mentioned.
Yes, he is mentioned. The sources see him showing strong leadership, particularly during protests or times of public action.
But does he have a path to national leadership soon?
Interestingly, no. According to Karen's astrological analysis, his chart does not indicate a clear path to national leadership like the presidency by 2028.
So the obvious political paths might not be the ones that actually manifest.
That seems to be a core message. The expected trajectories might be disrupted by these larger energetic forces.
Okay, we're covering a lot of ground here, exploring these really intricate predictions. Before we dive into the themes of justice and systemic change, just a quick reminder, if you're finding this deep dive insightful, please do take a moment to like, subscribe, and maybe share it with someone who'd find it interesting.
Yeah, that really helps us out.
You can find Allison Knows on Spotify and YouTube. Your support lets us keep bringing these unique perspectives to you. Okay, so with all this predicted upheaval, the leadership changes, the public awakening, is there a sense of ultimate justice emerging from these sources? Does everything balance out?
Yes, there's a very strong theme of justice. The phrase karma is catching up is used frequently.
Catching up too.
To those who have engaged in secretive or harmful acts. Justice is described not as something far off, but as being here and coming now. It's an active force.
How is this justice predicted to manifest?
Specifically, tribunals are predicted.
Tribunals?
Yeah.
Like court trials?
The sources liken them specifically to military trials, and they're predicted especially for certain CEOs.
CEOs, why them specifically?
Apparently, certain CEOs were made honorary officers in the National Guard sometime in the past.
Okay.
And this status, according to the sources, makes them subject to military justice, implying accountability for their actions under that system, possibly by early next year.
So using a sort of military framework for corporate accountability.
That's the interpretation given. It's described as Ryko energy being at play.
RICO, like the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act.
Not necessarily the legal statute itself being applied directly, but the spirit of it. The energy of accountability for organized criminal activity, suggesting a systematic dismantling of hidden, corrupt power structures, whether corporate or political.
Wow. Okay, so if individuals are being held accountable, what about the underlying system itself? Does it just get patched up, or do the sources suggest something more fundamental?
The current constitutional system, as it stands, is seen in these sources as not working anymore.
Not working.
Yeah, lacking teeth, lacking the ability to handle this new energetic environment and the level of corruption being exposed.
So what's the solution then?
It leads to a prediction that something more is needed. New additions, new amendments, or maybe even a whole new constitution might be required to truly reflect this awakening and the new kind of societal structure that's trying to emerge.
Whole new constitution. That's a massive prediction.
It is. It points towards fundamental systemic change, not just replacing personnel.
Now, what's really fascinating here, and something you touched on, is this concept of the United States having an oversoul.
Yes. That's a key concept.
For listeners who might be unfamiliar with this idea, could you explain what the sources mean by an oversoul in this context? And why is it considered so significant for the country's future, according to them?
Sure. The sources explain that the United States as a nation is said to have an oversoul. You can think of it as a kind of collective spiritual identity or a higher consciousness for the country itself.
Like a guiding spirit for the nation.
Sort of, yes. And this oversoul, historically, is said to have won every time it has faced and fought tyranny during specific astrological cycles called its Uranus returns.
Uranus returns, like astrological milestones for the country.
Exactly. For those familiar with astrology, Uranus returns signify periods of profound upheaval, revolution, and awakening for entities, whether individuals or nations. And the sources point to key moments in U.S. history.
Such as?
The Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War II. These are framed as previous Uranus return periods where the U.S. oversoul successfully battled tyranny.
So the idea is that facing down tyranny is part of America's spiritual destiny.
That's precisely the view presented. This historical and spiritual perspective suggests that despite the really intense current challenges, the country will ultimately not go down. It's destined to overcome.
And it has help.
Yes, the sources even mention presidents who are now on the other side, in spirit, helping the country navigate this. It suggests a belief in spiritual guidance for the nation. Overall, it leads to a prediction of a beautiful future, eventually.
That's quite optimistic, given the predicted chaos.
It is in the long term, and the planetary energies, astrologically speaking, are described as being supportive for rebuilding and positive change, especially looking ahead. There's even a mention that the midterms will go our way, suggesting a shift towards this positive rebuilding energy.
And it sounds like the people themselves, the ordinary citizens, are playing a huge active role in driving this spiritual and systemic shift. It's not just happening to them.
Indeed. Very much driven by the people. They are described as being pushed to their limits, really at the end of their ropes.
Why? What's pushing them?
Things like constantly rising prices, making life unbearable, but also more alarming events mentioned, like neighbors being mysteriously abducted or disappearing, things that create fear and anger.
And this leads to
an increased willingness, a real determination to push back against perceived tyranny and restrictions on freedom. There's a described trigger-happy mood among the populace.
Trigger-happy. Meaning quick to react.
Yes, meaning any attempts by those in power to, say, lock us down more or impose stricter controls would likely backfire spectacularly. It would just lead to more mayhem, more resistance.
So the attempts to control actually fuel the pushback.
Precisely. The sources say this continuous pushing by those perceived as being in power will actually act as the fuel and the catalyst to push back. People will harness those supportive energies we mentioned to create real momentum for change.
It's like the pressure creates the force needed for change.
Exactly. And this spirit isn't just political. The sources even predict a new pope is coming.
A new pope.
Yes, Pope Leo, described as a scrappy guy from the United States.
Scrappy. From the U.S. That's
Yeah.
unusual.
Very. And he's described as being outspoken, willing to fight for the underdog, really embodying this new, more assertive, truth-seeking, energetic shift. Even spiritual institutions are immune to this change.
Wow. So this predicted shift is really pervasive, touching everything from global politics to economics to spirituality.
It seems to be presented as a total transformation, yes.
So there you have it. That was quite a deep dive into this alternative narrative, wasn't it? Looking at global shifts, hidden powers, a collective awakening. We've explored these predictions of, well, dramatic leadership changes, significant public disillusionment turning into action, and this powerful sense of justice, of karma, finally catching up to the system.
It's certainly a complex tapestry. It presents a spiritual and, yes, often conspiratorial lens through which to view current events. And the core idea is that the chaos, the instability we see, isn't just noise. It's part of a larger, purposeful, energetic shift.
A shift towards what, ultimately?
Towards awakening, towards justice, and towards the emergence of a genuinely new societal structure, one that's perhaps more aligned with what the sources suggest. Humanity truly desires peace, truth, freedom.
So ultimately, what does this all mean for you, the listener, thinking about all this? How do these ideas, these concepts about unseen forces, about a collective oversoul for the nation, how might they influence your understanding of power?
Yeah, and your own sense of agency, perhaps. In a world that feels like it's undergoing such rapid, almost unbelievable, predicted change.
It definitely gives us a lot to consider, looking beyond just the surface level of events, doesn't it?
It really does. And as we wrap up here, we really invite you to reflect on how these insights, these predictions, resonate with your own observations of the world. What stands out to you from everything we've discussed? How might these behind-the-scenes narratives, whether you fully believe them or just find them interesting, maybe reshape your perspective on current events?
Food for thought, definitely. Okay, before we officially sign off, one last reminder. Please do like, subscribe, and share this deep dive if you found it valuable.
We appreciate the support.
You can find Allison Knows on Spotify and YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to the Allison Knows podcast. Follow Allison on Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok.